Hey, this is Stu for the Purple Valley Asana School, and we're going today look at Tirang Mukha Eka Paschimottanasana. Sorry about the pronunciation if it's a bit dodgy, but that's how it's going to be. So, with this posture, we've jumped through to Dandasana, and then we're going to fold the right leg back first. And this is where our problems can begin, really. For a lot of us, we are tight in finding this position to try and get the pelvis stable. And so what we feel is that we can be being pushed in this direction, yeah? And so we're already off balance when it comes to going forwards. So there's a few things that we can think about is, A, why is this happening? And B, what can we do about it, yeah? So this is a different rotation to most of the postures that we've been doing or do in the primary series, which are a lot of external rotation of the hip. This is a medial rotation of the hip, so the hip is rolling inwards, yeah? And so for some people, it's super easy. So for some people, like myself included, this is a really difficult position to get my leg to want to do, yeah? So if this is the case and you feel yourself falling that way, better to actually put something underneath your bum. So we can put that under your bum. You can put it under one cheek or both to actually bring you up a little bit, and you might find that you can sit a little bit squarer. So that's the first thing you can do, okay? And then from there, to do the proper posture, we would then be coming forwards and trying to reach as far forward as we can whilst keeping the chest up and leading with the chest rather than, again, rounding the back too much, okay? Now, if you're challenged in the straight-legged hip flexion, which is going to be this leg, then it might be that that's keeping you up rather than what's going on in this hip. But you always want to remember that the reason that we're doing something different with the bent leg all the time is to actually work some way differently with this bent leg, hip. Something like that, yeah, this side anyway. And so what we want to think about is, again, not just letting all our weight drop to that side, but keep grounding onto this side in order to actually work into this hip, yeah. Now, we've got a couple of things that we can talk about here relative to getting comfort for this knee. A lot of people, if they've got a lot of flesh on the back of their calf, or even just average flesh on the back of the calf, shall we say, want to get it out of the way, yeah. So what Karolina is showing now is just the way that most people do it, which is just to roll it out and sit back down. Now, you can see that we've now got a lump of flesh here, yeah, that can potentially actually be torquing the knee, yeah, because of the fact the knee movements at the knee are this and this and this and this when it's bent anyway, but not that, yeah. And so if you've got a lump of flesh on the outside of your thigh, you can see that it's wanting to move the shin in this direction, yeah? It feels comfortable for a certain while or for some people, but for others it can cause problems and put pressure on the inside of the knee, yeah? I think what they do in Iyengar, which is quite nice, and if you can pull it off, is to pull back from behind the back of the knee and pull the calf muscle back and down rather than just roll it out to the side. And so we can have a go at that. So open up a little bit. Try and pull the calf down and away from the knee. Hold it there as you close the leg up and put it back there and there. Feel any nicer? Yeah. And so what you're doing is you're trying to take some stuff away from the back of the knee and close it up rather than just roll it out, yeah? If you've got pretty dense, pretty springy calves, probably the moment you let go, it'll all just bounce back. But that is the action you really want to get, is lengthening away from the back rather than just rolling out the tissue. Because even if it feels okay to do, then over time it might not be too healthy for you. Now, the bigger the calf, yeah, like if you're a footballer or something like that, then the more you're going to want to feel that you need to take it out of the way. But of course, the more flesh you are, the more chances there is of going to be of torquing, yeah? So it might be that you need to sit on a bolster or more bolsters and decrease the amount of knee flexion necessary so that you don't put too much pressure on the knee. So just play with that idea of what this calf is doing as relative to what's happening at the knee, okay? And so let's say we've got all this bit comfortable, and now we're going to try and fold forward. As I say, it may be that you just get to here, and that's perfectly fine, yeah? what you want to do is make sure that your straight leg is very active again and that you're leading with the chest, that you're grounding through this sit bone. Now, this knee, the tendency will be, if you are very tight in the hips, will be for this to slide out, yeah? And if we show, we'll bring it here, and Karolina, if you fold forward really strict, and we say maybe she could get there without rounding at all, and now we let this knee drift out, yeah? And now do the same thing again, yeah? You can see that she gets further down because this knee has moved out of the way. But actually, you're sort of escaping from what is going on. So you want to keep this knee in as much as possible. If it drifts out a little bit, fine. But the whole idea with a lot of these postures is to know what it is you're meant to be doing and notice if you're not doing it, rather than just be in a position which you think is somewhere there and not really be worrying about it. So it doesn't mean you have to do it, but if you know what you need to be doing, then you recognize when you're making an adaptation. So that's my view of alignment, is it gives us a great idea of when we're cheating a particular posture. The legs don't need to be right together, okay? For a lot of people that is going to be too much, but they need to be, or what you're aiming for is parallel thighs, yeah? And so for some people, depending on the size of your thighs, they'll be parallel and they'll be touching. But for some people with smaller thighs, there'll be a gap between them, and that's perfectly fine. So we're looking really of the orientation of the femur bones rather than having things touching, yeah, because we're trying to accommodate everybody, yeah. So one thing we can look at as far as the ability for us to do this posture is what is the restriction, yeah? So if the restriction is the straight leg, then we'd come back to our normal thing of how do we test for it. Well, we do that in Supta Dandasana. We've done that before in other videos. So you're lying on your back, you're taking your leg up, and where does it come to? If it only comes to 90 degrees, well then your 90 degrees is mostly sitting up, okay? And so we'll say that we've investigated the straight leg, now we want to investigate the bent leg. So we can think about, do we have difficulty medially rotating our knee, yeah? And one other thing I want to just mention before I show you how we can check that is this foot. So we're going to turn Karolina to the side. So two things can happen really. One thing is people can tend to tuck this foot sideways and in under their bum, yeah? Because of the fact they're restricted on the front of the ankle. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to escape out that restriction by tucking it into the center. But basically that's the same as sickling your ankle when you're bringing it into Padmasana. And so you don't want to do that because eventually, again, over time, it will put pressure on the outside of the ankle. Better to keep it straight if you can and then work into that restriction. So it's a good, you're going to get some discomfort here, but you need to balance that out with working or whether it's too much. So again, you might need to sit on a cushion. Better that than to actually turn the foot in, okay? And the other thing, I'm not going to do it to Karolina, but the other thing is if I fake it, that you see people do sometimes, is they turn the foot out to the side, okay? Now that is a big no-no, yeah? Because it can really put a torquing factor on the knee. Now, you've seen kids on the beach before sitting in what would be a Virasana. So imagine that I've got both feet doing the same. I'm sitting between my knees with both feet turned out. And they're completely and utterly happy sitting in that position. Sorry, I've just spat and I just see it on the mat. It's really just distracting me. I'm getting old, sorry. I've got these already awful habits now. So getting back to the story, you might see that the kids are just sort of rolling their hips inwards and can sit very nicely in that position. And that's because the whole thing can move as one and they can rotate around. As we get older, we tend to get a little bit stiffer and that movement reduces a lot. Now for people that are able to sit like that and maybe have been sitting like it for years since they've been a kiddie, then the chances are that they're perfectly healthy sitting in that position because the whole inner thigh rolls out along with the leg and it's very, very much more medially rotated. But the problem with letting them do it is if they have a day when they're not quite so open, they can very easily torque the knee. And the other problem is that if other students see somebody doing something, then if they're not too secure in their own practice, they may think, oh, maybe I should be doing like that. And then they'll try and copy it, and then they'll hurt their knee. So always have the feet pointing straight back. Don't have them ever turned out to the side, even if you can actually do it, with comfort. So that was just a little bit about the ankle, but now we want to see if we can test Karolina's ability to medially rotate her hip, And so if we lay her on her belly, and we get the cushion out, and you're going to be on your belly with your, with your head this end, but on your belly. If we now just bend her knees to 90 degrees, and now if we let the ankle bones drop out, this is showing us her ability to medially rotate. And you may actually, can you see that? So if you look at my hands, as I roll her thigh this way, this part of my hand would be going here. The inner part of my hand, if I was there, would be going this way, which is the same as medial rotation, So this is a real good demonstration of how easily we can medially rotate. If our feet are still pointing here, it means we're really challenged with medial rotation. If they're like way out and way down towards the floor, which we see with Karolina's having trouble controlling her own legs, if they're really down towards the floor, then they're like amazing amounts of medial rotation. Somewhere in the range of here to here is really quite normal, something else you sometimes see is a big difference between the sides, that one hip is way, way more open than another, And so if we find that we're somewhere like this, then we're going to need to work on the medial rotation and for this particular posture. If it's way out here, well, then we know it's not the medial rotation that's actually restricting us, it's something else. So we'll bring you back up to seated, Karolina. So to work on the medial rotation, it's really some postures that are really like laying on your back, taking your legs apart. So lay back down for me. You can see we planned this very well. And then we're just going to drop our knees together, And so if you're not too bad at medial rotation, then that feels like you're not doing actually anything at all. But if you're quite tight, like if I come to do this posture, I really had to actually work the muscles to actually keep the knees together, because that is one of my major restrictions is medial rotation of the hip, And so just use this and then gradually work the feet out, and that will allow for a little bit more medial rotation, and then try the posture again and see whether it made a difference, If it isn't the medial rotation, then as I say, it can either be the straight leg or it might be tension in the glutes, so in glute max, in which case you're back to working happy get baby again and working the hips down, and then try the posture again. Again, we've given you a demo of happy baby in a previous video, And so just play with that. Think about why you're doing or why you're placing your legs in different positions in these postures, and try always to be working in that bent leg, and that like at least 70% of your effort should be thinking about what is happening in the leg that I've done something different with, not the leg that's just out in front of me. The tendency is, as I say, just to lean a little bit and flop forwards towards the straight leg, but you're really avoiding the work that needs to go on in the bent hip. So I hope you enjoyed that, and there'll be more from Asana School very shortly, I'm sure.